Hello people of YouTube, I'm John and I'm back again with another product spotlight. I got a message from my friend James recently who said, hey, I have something cool that you should spotlight. So, let's go over to the workbench and take a look at it. Alright, so here's what we're looking at today. This is a Scale Train's Rivet counter, SD40T-2, also known as a tunnel motor. Looking at ScaleTrains.com website, it appears as though they have about 12 different models, and they range in price from $170 to $275. The Rivet counter series with DCC and sound installed at the factory goes for $275. You can probably find it for less if you shop around online. And you can go to ScaleTrains.com website to find out if they have the one you're looking for available. Let's take a closer look. Alright, so in case you've been living under a rock somewhere, I'll just let you know ScaleTrains.com is known to most modelers as being one of the most exquisitely detailed models available on the market these days. And this model is no exception. One of the really cool things that Scale Trains pioneered is the see-through grills in the back. If you look through here, you can see that you can see through those grills and there are no obstructions. What I'm talking about, anyone who's been around these models for a while knows that the only tunnel motors available before were made by a different company, and you could see the gear tower inside the grills. Well, Scale Trains came along and changed all that, and now the other company or companies who are trying to make tunnel motors are trying to limit the amount of gear tower you can see. So my hat goes off to Scale Trains for pushing the needle on this important detail. And I have to say that looking at all the other detail on this model, I mean, not just these grills, but these grills and this grill and just everything on this is super detailed. And they come like this out of the box. The paint on the model looks really, really good. One of the complaints that I used to have on Scale Train's earlier models, especially Union Pacific, was that their yellow never looked right to me. Well, you know, you could say that Union Pacific Armor Yellow is not always the same on every locomotive, and it's true. Some locomotives have been sitting out in the sun more than others, but the yellow on this model looks correct. Something else I gotta mention, just right off the top of the spotlight here, is just look at all this detail in the trucks. You know, there's this extra little brake wire, you know, brake line detail. There's a lot of extra detail on the air reservoir. You can see a little valve down here. There's under sill detail that's apparent from the side view like this. And this is all stuff that modelers who wanted to super detail models like this used to have to add afterwards. You know, it would come without all that stuff and you'd have to buy a little kit and install all that stuff yourself. Well, again, Scale Trains changed all that. It's all on there now. See all the little details on and around the fuel tank that are picked out with paint. There's also more undersill detail here. And just, it's pretty amazing what they've done. And while we're at it, I'm going to mention that the cab windows open and close. The windows on this particular model are very loose, so you have to be careful. My suggestion would be if you wanted to have them a specific way and have them stay that way, you might want to use some canopy glue or something like that to glue them in place. Something else worth mentioning is that the model has the sunshade installed from the factory as well as the armrest. And that's something that you've been seeing a little bit more on really super detailed models, is that armrest. So just, there's everything on this model, I think, that you would think of adding as an aftermarket part. It comes like that straight out of the box. So again, hats off. It's a really amazing looking model straight out of the box. Something else I noticed as I picked it up and brought it onto the workbench here is that it's a very heavy model. So I'm expecting that this would be a beast pulling a train. So I just can't say enough about just the first impression pulling this out of the box. Everything impresses me very positively. Taking a look at the front of the locomotive, you can see that the windshield wipers are very fine freestanding parts, as well as the really fine wire grabs, right? That looks really good. And something else I'm noticing is that the sand filler hatch also looks really good. Looking down in the front, you can see the snowplow detail. It has the grabs. This is something else that you used to have to add separately later. There's also some cut lever detail here, and then the MU cables come through and hang over the snowplow just like they did on the real things. And then of course you can see that this has ditch lights which work, and we're going to look at that later, but just it's a very impressive level of detail on this thing. Looking on the fireman's side, you can see not only is there MU hose detail, but there's also an air hose there. So there's a freestanding brake wheel over here. And something else I'm really enjoying about this model are the safety striping, little white pinstripes on the step wells. That looks particularly good. Okay, so we'll look at the fireman's side here, and it's kind of the same as the engineer side with the sunshade, right? The windows on the cab open and close. That is an armrest, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's a lot of extra detail in the truck on this side. This looks like a speed recorder with the cable that goes off into the underside there. We have brake detail. There's a little brake chain over here, and same with the back. You have all kinds of little brake lines, and just it looks amazing. Also, if I tilt it back a little bit, you can see the undersill detail. All this cabling down in here and this extra stuff that goes down along the fuel tank. Just, it's a lot of detail. And again, this is one of those things where I'm really glad that Scale Trains came along and started adding all this stuff, because this gives modelers, or I should say operators, a chance to run something out of the box that's super detailed, instead of having to buy something that's not detailed and then having to find all the little metal parts. And now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because a lot of people enjoy the hobby that way, by super detailing their own stuff, and some people think of it as a challenge. But with this, you don't have to. And I think that especially for people who like to operate and aren't so much the people that like to tinker around working on models, super detailing them and stuff like that, this is a great thing to have. The detail on the rear of the model is very similar to that on the front, with very fine, separately applied wire grabs. There's a grab that curves around the corner of the locomotive right there. Cut lever detail here. MU hoses. Gee, what more could you want on it? And there's the air hose, right? The MU hoses are also on this side. Wow. We got to look at the top of this thing. All right, so if you want to see more really cool details, you've come to the right place. These are metal grills that are attached on top of the model separately. And you can see there's a wire grab there as well. But the highlight, I think, or one of the highlights, would be the fans. Look at the depth in these things. That's something else people would normally add as an aftermarket part. And these fans make it so you don't need to add anything. Check out the antenna as well. And not only is there the antenna there, which is really cool, but there's a conduit that runs along the top of the locomotive and around, and it looks like it goes into the cab. That's pretty cool. You know, and I'm not even mentioning yet, but what about the air conditioner? And the bell also. I mean, this is just, well, I said it before. It's exquisite detailing. It's just amazing. Something else that's probably hard to see from this angle. I'm going to get a lower angle on it so that you can see, but the lift rings also look like separately applied pieces, and they look like they might even be metal pieces. And they're so finely rendered as to look really to scale. Alright, do you know what I always say? It's my favorite part. We're going to run this engine and see how it goes. Alright, so we're going to have a look at the lights real quick here. The headlight is operated with F0, and that's directional. And the ditch lights come on with F6. The number boards come on with F8 when you turn the sound on. And you can see they're a bit dimmer than the other lights. That might help see them a little better. And now we'll take a look at the rear headlight. If you look, you can see that the number boards are actually painted on the back. So having the sound on or off does not change the number boards in the backwards direction of travel. Scale Trains has become really one of the 3 or maybe 4 premier model makers, especially for people who like super detailed models straight out of the box. This model delivers enough detail really to satisfy anybody. The only thing that it might not satisfy is if there was something that a really nitpicky rivet counter didn't like. Maybe the bell was a couple inches too far to the left or something silly like that. Other than that, I don't know what you could complain about. Just everything about this model, the detail, the paint looks accurate, the paint is clean, it's crisp, it sounds good, it runs especially well. I didn't show it, but I ran it without sound off camera, and the thing is so quiet. It's just, what can I say? Scale Trains, hit it out of the park. I'll see you next time.